The Play Absolutely podcast with Dr. Sue Jennings and Dr. Andy Hickson.
Welcome to another edition of the Play Absolutely podcast. Hello, Sue. How you doing?
Hi, Andy. A bit bruised and battered, but I'm okay.
Bit bruised and battered. Yeah, well, I can see this funny thing on the end of your nose. It looks like somebody's been playing with your nose. What's happened?
No, all deadly serious. The surgeon had to remove a BCC from the end of my nose.
Oh, you've had some surgery.
Yes.
Wow.
He also removed two on my forehead, but they're under my fringe, so you can't see them.
Well, what's a BCG?
A
BCCG?
basal cell carcinoma?
Okay. A
It's
cancerous
like a
growth.
pre-cancer
Pre-cancer, right. Okay.
growth, so they remove them. Usually caused by being in too much sunshine.
Which is strange when you live in the UK. I think we had 1 day of sunshine so far this year.
Well, the first thing the surgeon asked me was what countries had I visited for any length
Right.
of time.
Okay.
And when I said Malaysia, he said, don't say anything more. That's where it'll have come from.
Right. Okay. Wow. And you being,
So
of course, originally a redhead, more susceptible to the sun, I suppose, than
he said, you
anyone
should be
else.
living in Scotland.
What's he saying about
That was his
Scotland?
advice.
Cold and wet. Okay. So, well, that's very courageous of you to come on and film the podcast with your battle scars.
Well, it's slowly getting easier. It pulls a bit, the stitches. I've got about 8 in my forehead and about 3 on my nose. So,
Yes. Wow.
and
Okay.
they'll dissolve.
Oh, they're the dissolving type. Right.
And then they should be okay.
So, as we're on a podcast about play, and without wanting to diminish the experience, have you been doing anything playful to try and take your mind off the surgery?
Well, interesting, the surgeon himself was very playful. He just didn't stop talking the whole time. I didn't know surgeons could multitask. I've not met that before, but he was amazing and kept asking me playful questions about what I did and my work and about play, which was amazing.
Ah,
And when I said to him that play needed much more attention, he completely agreed with me. So it wasn't a totally playful experience. I mean, even though you have a local anaesthetic, you still get the sensation of the knife and the needle. But nevertheless, it was quite a surprising experience that he could actually engage with one at a playful level as well as doing his surgical job.
Yeah, I think it's maybe it's not just a playful level, but a caring level. I remember one experience, the dentist, for example. I've always had issues with the dentist, but I went to one dentist when I was living a few years ago in Malaysia, funnily enough, and I was having an extraction. And there was the dentist who was doing the extraction, but also her assistant as well. And I've never had this in the UK when I've been to the dentist, but when she started the extraction, when the dentist started the extraction, the other assistant, instead of sort of messing about, sorting stuff out like they would in the UK, she held my hand. And throughout the whole procedure, she held my hand and was sort of comforting and so on. And I mean, I didn't ask for that. I suddenly felt, my hand being held. And I actually found it very reassuring and it helped. Yeah. Even as an old man.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
interesting that, whether it's physical touch or telling jokes or listening to music, it somehow will always distract you from the actual pain. And that's what's important, I think. That if
It
it's
is.
total silence, all you can focus on is the pain itself.
Indeed. Indeed. Okay, well, let's give you a little bit of a break, Sue, and we can go into this week's Play in the News. Right, well, we could not find any good stories about play in the UK this week, so we have two stories from abroad. The first is from Belgium, where people are turning bullying into an escape game to train recognition and early intervention. This story is from the Drum and AXA Trade magazine, who are promoting this public-facing prevention campaign using play mechanics. AXA and its partners launched this physical and digital escape bullying game designed to help families and schools recognize bullying warning signs and intervene earlier. The game uses puzzles and narrative backtracking to show how a harmless joke can become sustained bullying and ends up with practical guidance for conversation and response. It's play used as an empathy engine and a rehearsal space for bystanders. Now, this is a kind of social theatre logic in another form, moving forwards through scenes, finding the pivot points, then practicing alternative choices. We have talked about play being able to hide bullying. This could be a new tool that teaches people how to spot it and interrupt it. Next, we go to China, where kindergarten children take part in tree planting as hands-on playful learning. The story comes from Xinhua, who write about kindergartens and schools holding organized tree planting activities ahead of China's National Tree Planting Day, involving children directly in planting with teachers and volunteers, positioning environmental action as something you learn through doing. It's not framed as free play, but it's clearly play adjacent. Hands, soil, teamwork, and a shared purpose. Now, for me, this shows that sometimes the most regulating play is doing something real together with your hands. We've missed the China tree planting date, which was the 12th of March, by the way. So that's this week's Play in the News. What do you think of those?
Both of those things are absolutely great. And the one from Belgium sounds quite sophisticated and developed.
It does. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I wonder if it'll catch on here, because it's something we need to know more about. But you said it was in a trade magazine.
Yes, well, that huge company, AXA, it's something they've been developed. And I mean, it's sort of social theatre that we've been looking to do online for many years. So it looks like they've taken some of the mechanics of social theatre, of theatre of the oppressed, and developed an online game. Sounds brilliant.
Well, my new news, so to speak, about play this week
All
is
right.
I want to introduce a new concept for people called proactive play,
Proactive play.
as contrasted with reactive play. Because once you get into the therapy field, there's huge debate about non-directive, directive. Do you just allow the child to play? Do you comment? Or do you analyze? Or do you actually just observe? My contention has always been that's all very well, but for some children, if they don't get some input, they just keep repeating and going over and over again their own experience, which could be very limited experience. So proactive play is not directive, but it's like a shared partnership. I talk about play partners rather than having a hierarchy. And in particular, it is for situations where children are waiting, because they have to wait for assessment, they have to wait for treatment, often months and months and sometimes years, because all the organizations like CAMS are now overwhelmed with referrals.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think we should be in a position where a child can have something now. And
Yeah.
then, so it's not proactive therapy, it's proactive play. So no one can suggest you're interfering with a process, particularly if a case has to go through the court, for example.
Right.
Judges don't take kindly to therapy. They say it could influence a child in what they tell in court.
Of
And
course.
I've always developed something that I call maintenance play, where
Mm.
adult and child or group of children play together. But proactive play takes it a step further. And I've actually designed the sort of equipment one should use for proactive play
Can
in
I just,
terms,
yeah, no, carry on.
I say in terms of rhythmic play in one tray, messy play in another tray, and dramatic play in another tray, with a limited number of objects so the child isn't overwhelmed. Because even if they haven't yet been formally assessed, they will have been questioned. They will have been asked questions by families, by teachers, by Senkos, all these people. The child already is feeling completely undermined with all this. I mean, no questionnaire is enhancing. But the only one I know is with Mouli Lahad, when he always talks about what the child can do, not what the child can't do. So proactive play has 3 trays of different sensory and rhythmic objects. And the child's just invited, what would they like to play with? And it's such a simple exercise, and I want to encourage parents to get involved. So it doesn't need a therapist, it's simple play. So
Mm.
anyone in contact with children could do proactive play.
I mean, of course, one thing about therapeutic play being used proactively is it can help build capacities that later reduce the need for more reactive intervention. You know, attachment, security, emotional regulation, frustration, tolerance, agency, all of those things it can help build,
But I
right?
mean, if you take rhythmic play as a basic starter and immediately relate it to heartbeats, the child could start to find their own heartbeat. And once they've got that rhythm, they can pick up a shaker, which will be in one of the trays, and shake their own personal rhythm. Their play partner, they can feel their heartbeat and decide, is it the same or not? Because whenever we get situations where children have meltdowns, almost always rhythmic play of some kind is an intervention, either rocking or rubbing the back or clapping hands, making a song, and so on. It's that return
Bouncing,
to a
clapping.
normal rhythm is important to re-regulate, because the child that has the meltdown has lost their self-regulation.
What about outdoor adventure play
I
within this paradigm?
repeatedly want to encourage, and of course, when we go to see the Temiars soon, we'll see them doing outdoor play, playing in the river, playing on the muddy bank, doing lots of messy play and water play. It's just built into their whole lifestyle. And I think what's very interesting as the Temiar children grow up, they have that regulatory experience of living near a river.
Mm,
And if you remember when we lived there, the sound of the river flowing was something that used to help us sleep at night.
indeed.
And when we got back to UK and there was no river, we found it very difficult not to have that sound that helped us sleep.
So, from my understanding of play, well, proactive play from the work that we've done together over the years is, I mean, firstly, it helps it helps a child with their agency, so child agency. It sort of warms co-regulation. Has the quality of repetition and rhythm, like you talked about, the heartbeat and so on. Like in drama therapy, we've got a symbolic distance in play, and play often has manageable challenges. So, sort of, it can be small segments without thinking of the whole world or changing the whole world. You're just looking at one small bit, so one small area that you can play with and explore.
I mean, something I think wonderful in that context is the use of a rain stick.
Love the sound of rain
And a rain
sticks.
stick and that sound like the sea and going from one, and children are intrigued with rain sticks and it slows them down. They normally don't start hitting people with them or misusing them. They are absolutely captivated by that sound. So a rain
Have you
stick
ever
would certainly go on.
have you ever in your workshop sessions made rain sticks with your participants?
No, that's something I want to learn how to do because I think that could be a very, very useful thing, that you don't just get provided with a rain stick, you make one.
I mean, essentially, the rain stick is, you've got a long tube, the longer the better, and you've got sort of things like matchsticks or little bits of wood going in, so it is a little barrier, and you fill it with something, typically rice, but it can be other kind of small beans, lentils, and then they all at one end. So when you tip it over, you've got the sound of them hitting those things, so they don't just kind of go whoosh. It's a trickle, sounding like rain. Great to make. It's a great activity. It takes a bit of time to make, but then you've got something really nice at the end of it to, yeah. I love a rain stick.
So
It's
that
something
could
we could
be, sorry?
potentially do it's something we could potentially do in the jungle with some bamboo. We're getting some long bamboo, and make rain sticks out of that. That might be something. I'll think about that.
Perhaps we can bring some bamboo back with us to make some rain sticks.
Well, yes, we need to be careful about that. The authorities bringing in things that they see as sort of live matter material. Often they don't let you bring that through, so you need to be careful. Maybe wrap it in cling film. Look like it's bought from a shop. They're more likely to let it through. Crazy, really.
Yeah, rain sticks and those wooden eggs that you can use like a shaker
Yes.
are very good for rhythmic play, and they're again made of natural materials.
Wow. Yes, of course. I mean, shakers are very easy to make, in terms of just having some kind of. I think the basic ones that we've made in workshops before, you just get a plastic container, enough to be able to put a few lentils in, and then seal it up, decorate it how you want, and you have a shaker, don't you? So,
Yes, there's
good.
always that feeling not to have too much plastic if one can help it, but it's very difficult to avoid it these days.
Difficult, not impossible, but also one feels, or certainly I feel better if I've been able, after using the food or whatever was in the container, to be able to repurpose it. Making a shaker or something is good. Yeah. So have you
No,
done any other playful things this week, or anything else you want to say about?
well, I think within the proactive play, to build in some mindfulness experience. So
How would
having
you do that?
bubbles and then breathing. So the fun with bubbles, the children love making bubbles, but the important thing is the effect of actually breathing to blow the bubbles. Because you
Yes.
breathe in and you blow, and you're immediately calming yourself down. So bubbles, I feel you can't do without when you're working with young children and play.
Okay. Anything else on this particular bit of play before we move on?
Well, I've only been talking about the rhythmic side of it. Then there's the second tray, which is the messy tray. So
Okay.
having Play-Doh and finger paint. And you can
Jelly.
get some lovely things called paint sticks now. And which means that you can paint even quite vigorously without making too much mess, without it just going everywhere. Paint sticks are very, very handy. And of course, with dramatic play, you would think about maybe a mask to wear or a baseball cap or something to dress up to be a different role. You could think about the Russian dolls inside each other because they represent different roles. And I discovered something just recently called emotion fans. And they're small, about this size in a pack.
Right.
And you can lay them out, and each one has a different emotion with a face on it. So you've got happy, you've
Okay.
got sad, you've got angry, and so on. And
Mm.
quite an interesting visual thing for a child to say how they're feeling today, to be able to point to one of the fans.
Mm.
So I've been researching a lot of material. I think the most fun one at the moment is, do you remember the old-fashioned kaleidoscope where you'd shake
Do.
it up and then look? And there's some lovely ones online, very inexpensive, with lots of absolutely delightful pictures. And I thought, what a good way of helping to manage change. That children that have got anxious because of moving house or losing a parent or changing school. Yet a kaleidoscope gives you beautiful change.
Does.
And it's very simple for the child to do themselves.
A lot of these things, of course, I mean, just like the shakers, can be made. And I know you love to use, particularly in your messy play, lots of sort of ingredients one could find in a kitchen. And I'm thinking things you haven't mentioned before. Jelly. That's quite, must be feeling quite nice to sort of sink your hands in the jelly. And of course, I mean, I know you've talked about sort of mud and sand play. You have a sand tray. But have you experimented, for example, being able to make something really sloppy with, like, so if you get a bowl of sand and you put a lot of water in it, it's going to be very, very sloppy. But if you put a little bit of water in, it's going to be quite hard and you can sort of build your sand castles. So have you done any experiments with, how much water gives you the sort of the ideal lovely texture to be able to work it, but
Well,
still
there's a whole
feel the
process
niceness?
one can do with flour and water. Because if you start off with the water and put a little bit of a little bit of flour in, you get a sort of slimy water, which is a completely different texture than when you put in some more, then it becomes a sticky texture.
But did I just stop you there a sec? Because just from cooking, I know that if you start with water and you put powder, so flour, it's really difficult to mix because you get kind of pockets of flour, for example, don't you? Um,
So you need
whereas
to mix it really well.
if you start with the powder and add the water, then you can properly mix
But then it
the
goes in
dry
the
stuff.
reverse order. Because once you get a lot of water, you've then got a flour and water mix that you can't model with. But you're right, you can take it in either direction. If you're able to use custard powder, you then get that magical moment when it turns bright yellow. And I remember that as a very young child, when my mother made custard to go with something, I always wanted to watch while it turned yellow. And years and years later, when my mother had invited us to go home for a meal, and she said she was going to have apple pie and custard, and I thought about this turning yellow, but she'd made a baked custard in the oven. And I was so disappointed, even as a young adult, that we weren't having custard powder custard, so I could see the yellow. It was very, very funny, that, because everyone else said, "What do you mean custard powder? This is real custard." But again, it's all to do with sensory stimulation, those visual changes, those textual changes. That 1 minute you're playing with slimy feeling water, the next minute you're playing with something very sticky that's difficult to get off your hands. And then you suddenly work out if you put dry flour on your hands, you can get it off. But then the next step,
Absolutely. Yeah.
you can model with it and make things and so on.
It's like if you got really sticky hands from, I don't know, touching honey or anything sticky, and you don't have access to water, a bit of sand or a bit of earth will actually help take that stickiness away, won't it? Wow. Okay. Well, I'm just sort of thinking of all the things in the kitchen. Like I mentioned jelly, that's really nice. But kind of most kind of, rice pudding, I suppose that would feel quite nice as well. Here's me sort of thinking lots of food substances that you can waste. Blancmange, Angel Delight, all these
Mashed
things.
potato.
The trouble is mashed potato. But once you've played with it, it becomes inedible. And strangely enough, all right, let's link this back to the Temia. They would think very differently about playing with food because it's something that they particularly don't like, isn't it? There's quite a lot of taboos against playing with your food in Temia society. So why do you think that is? And why does that, a lot of Temia, I don't know, way of thinking, way of life is within both of us. So with you particularly, and you've talked about the development, using sort of Temia ideas and so on, the development of neurodramatic play. What about when ideas such as the messy play and playing with food, which is totally in Temia society not acceptable, really, for want of
Well, I
a
think this
better
is
phrase.
where, in all forms of education and therapy, we have to be very mindful of the culture we're working with. I mean, even in Western culture now, when you think half the world is starving, I do have certain reservations about playing with food. I mean, the way I deal with it is, if ever I buy food for playing, I'll buy the same amount of food to put in the food bank.
Yes, you mentioned that before.
So that sort of satisfies my conscience, if you like. But you see, I think for the Temia, it's partly tied up with their whole belief system of transforming something from the natural world into the cultural world. And once you've done that, you don't interfere with it anymore. So, I mean, once you've cooked your rice, that becomes part of culture because you've done something to it. I mean, they don't have difficulty with children playing with mud on the riverbank. So it's not the messy play, it's what the substance is that
It's
they're
not the
playing
mess.
with.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me, I'm trying to remember the author. When we did anthropology, there was one book called The Raw and the Cooked, which was a social anthropology
Yes,
book.
Levi Strauss.
Levi Strauss, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm. And of course you've got. I mean, there's lots, isn't there? You've got nature, culture. There's lots of social anthropology books, which of course, we've both, you and I both undertaken university degrees in social anthropology. So I think that's another string to our bows, which has helped us in the work that we do in theatre, in the development of play, and so on.
Well, the last drama therapy job I had, I introduced anthropology as a subject into the course. And I felt it just kept a more objective view of, and if I had my way, all the drama therapy students would have done a placement in another culture.
Right.
I
Good.
don't think the training these days emphasizes anthropology as much as I would like, but then I'm not in it anymore, so I can't really dictate. But I
Hmm.
know when I did study anthropology myself, it made a huge difference to how I viewed play and drama and child development. Huge difference.
Hmm. Well, I think that's something more to talk about in another podcast. I'm mindful of the surgery that you've recently had, so let's not make this one a long podcast, so that you can get some additional rest. I think you would like to say a few words, though, before we do finish up, about the Neurodramatic Play Conference that happened in Dublin a few weeks ago.
Yes.
Uh,
It was
what?
such a joyful experience.
Yeah.
I mean, you rarely go to a conference where people are encouraged to get up and dance and move around. I mean, people were in small groups round tables, but the room was big enough that there was space to dance through the tables and round. And it just brought a different atmosphere to the learning. That people danced, they learnt new ways of moving rhythmically, making music, making sounds, joining in the techniques that were being taught rather than just hearing about them. And I think that is the essence of what play is. You actually
Hmm.
do it. You
Yeah.
don't listen to stories about it. And the whole day
Hmm.
was like that. And ending up with very much almost like a nursery tea of scones and jam and cream with a drink in the afternoon, which sort of kept it in that playful arena. So, yes, it was very worthwhile. We'll have various reports coming out in different newsletters as well. And we've got confirmation for next year, again in Dublin, for the third conference.
Fabulous.
So,
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, let's segue into the end. And as we do on the end of every podcast, if everybody's feeling the blues, feeling a bit of anxiety, we try to suggest an activity, a brief activity, playful activity that they can do to help alleviate maybe some anxiety that they're feeling. So, Sue, this week, what would you like to recommend or suggest to our viewers?
this week, I can suggest to people to focus very much on a simpler form of messy play. Have a little tub of Play Doh, particularly if you can choose the colour that you want. But it comes in tubs that's just big enough to mould with your hands. You can have it in your hands, you can press it and squeeze it and roll it and pat it. And it's amazing in that small piece of clay-like substance how you can focus your anxiety and your tension and get very relaxed. So yes, Play-Doh for anxiety, definitely.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, I was going to say similarly, but not similar at all, really. But this is a rehearsal activity often used with actors, helping them warm up and so on. It's about listening to what you hear. Now, I got this activity when I worked with Augusto Boal for the first time. One of the ones that he suggested is to get a piece of paper and close your eyes and just listen to all the sounds that you hear. So every time you hear a sound, write that sound down. That will, of course, include in the end the sound of the pen on the paper. So yeah, write the list of sounds, and as well as taking you away from your immediate thoughts, if you do that activity for just 2 or 3 minutes, listening to the sounds, you'll be amazed about how many sounds you can actually hear when you listen that your mind, your brain, if you like, has just filtered out before. So as well as blowing your mind with all the new sounds that you didn't realize you were listening to, it's a beautiful calming activity as well that helps take you out of your immediate thoughts even for a few minutes. And I think that is another way to help reduce anxiety. So before we go, any last minute things you want to say, Sue?
Yes, don't be scared of mess. All these
Scared of
attempts to
mess.
keep our houses clean and sanitized, very powerful advertising. And I'm quite curious about the most recent things with washing products. Have you noticed how people keep smelling their clothes? And even a team of rugby players are sniffing each other's T-shirts.
In the adverts, yes.
Absolutely crazy. So as a counter to that, I'm saying, forget the smells, have some mess to play with.
Well, on that, actually, I mean, I can't remember where I got this from. It's a phrase I've been using for many years. If I remember, I will credit whoever gave it to me, but it's many years ago. And you can see mess or dirt, if you like, as misplaced matter. So in one context, a load of earth is going to be, if it's in your house, is going to be dirty, messy. But if it's out in your garden, it's not. So, there isn't such a thing, if you like, of pure dirt. It's misplaced matter. It just depends where it ends up.
It's very much in anthropology. We were taught that, I think.
Okay. Maybe that's, yeah, where I got it from. Okay. It's been wonderful again to speak with you this week, Sue. I look forward to the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell for more notifications. It really helps our algorithm and to getting these free resources out to a wider audience. So look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Please leave a comment. But this is Andy saying goodbye, and don't forget to play.
Don't forget to play.